There's nothing more wonderful than a free trip abroad.
exclaimed Nate, his voice brimming with innocent excitement. Meanwhile, a cold, burning anger was swirling within my heart. On the day the eldest son and his wife came for their marriage greeting, they had secretly taken my credit card. With it, they joyfully funded their honeymoon, unbeknownst to me. This son had always had a poor sense of money, and despite my numerous attempts as a parent to guide him, I had hoped marriage would bring some stability. But any hope I held was shattered by this betrayal. I had forgiven him as my son many times before, but this time it was unforgivable. In retaliation, I decided to stop the credit card usage. I was resolved to sever ties with my son, ready to take thorough measures. Not only did I cancel the card, but I also set my phone to block his calls, and I moved out without his knowledge. As a result, a fitting end awaited him for his deeds. My name is Emily, and I am 72 years old. Having lost my beloved husband 3 years ago, I had been living alone in my ancestral home ever since. I have 2 children. My eldest daughter, Anna, had always been self-sufficient, voluntarily fulfilling her responsibilities at home. Anna grew up to be a straight and true individual, now married, working as a nurse, and raising her 2 children. In contrast, my eldest son Nate had been troublesome since childhood, often reprimanded for neglecting homework in favor of play and barely meeting the low standards for high school and college admission. His college days were spent in leisure rather than learning, causing constant worry for us about his employability. Nate's job search was a struggle, with no suitable workplace found. As his graduation loomed, there were no job offers in sight. In a state of deep concern, my husband contacted a relative who owned a company, arranging employment for Nate as a last resort. Yet even in the workplace, Nate's conduct was far from commendable, often drinking late into the night and failing to return home until the early morning. One morning, Nate complained of a headache, saying,
"I'm too sick to work today."
I was emphasizing the importance of responsibility, scolded him, "You can't just skip work so easily. You need to have a sense of responsibility as a working adult and apply yourself more." I insisted. Nate, visibly annoyed, responded,
"Stop yelling. My head's raining. Heck, I feel sick."
He muttered in discomfort. Frustrated, I commanded, "Go to the bathroom and throw up right now." My concerns about my son went beyond his frivolous lifestyle. He was frequently out at night, indulging in clubs and flings, displaying troubling behavior. His company often called to complain about his many mistakes at work and his defiant attitude when corrected. Each time, my husband and I would apologize for our son's actions, but there was no sign of improvement. On the other hand, my daughter, after getting married and becoming a mother, brought a beautiful little girl into the world. My granddaughter was a great comfort, her presence an irreplaceable joy. When my daughter brought my granddaughter home for a visit, I gave her a cash gift to celebrate her marriage and childbirth. Seeing this, my son muttered enviously,
"It's unfair how others easily get their hands on money."
"Why would you say that? Marriage and raising children cost money."
Huh? If you choose married life, you should manage without relying on parents. If you're going to depend on mom and dad, don't get married or have kids.
"Why are you in such a bad mood?" I asked, perplexed by my son's sour disposition. Each time Nate showed jealousy towards his sister, couldn't help but sigh.
That's a luxury you can afford to say right now. You haven't left home yet and act freely. Do you really think your future is secure with this lifestyle?
That's none of your business.
Nate snapped back, his voice laced with anger. Having always detested being compared to his sister, Nate, who had kept his distance from the exemplary eldest daughter, fled to his room, not wanting to see her face.
Is Nate really okay? Won't he remain a child forever? Maybe it's time to be a bit stricter with him.
Kate suggested to me with concern. "I do think you're right, but he never listens to anything I say."
Indulgence might be a temporary pleasure, but I feel it eventually becomes a source of distress.
I pondered deeply, my daughter's words resonating with me, wondering if I had unconsciously been too lenient with my son. I was not treating my son specially, just acknowledging that he was slower to mature compared to my daughter. Yet, there were moments when I questioned, was there something wrong with my parenting? After many discussions with my husband, we decided to take a firmer stance with our son and put forward a proposal to him.
"You're saying I should start living on my own?"
Nate asked, unable to hide his bewilderment. "Yes, that's what I'm suggesting. How about trying to live by yourself?"
"Why? I have no complaints about living at home right now."
He countered with a hint of anxiety. I addressed him with a dose of reality. "But you've always made me take care of the household chores, and you haven't contributed to living expenses, right? Now that you've been working for quite some time, I think it's high time you learn to manage your own finances and experience doing household chores." Nate asked with a tinge of anger.
"So you're basically saying you want to kick me out of the house?"
My husband, calm yet firm, clarified.
It's not about kicking you out. As your mother said, it's a good opportunity to learn about society. We won't be around forever, so you need to practice providing for yourself.
Reluctantly, Nate could only nod in agreement. Then, on the milestone of his 30th birthday, Nate broached an important subject with us. Hesitating slightly, he ventured,
Could I maybe borrow some money?
What are you talking about?
my husband asked, incredulous. Nate desperately defended his request.
It's different. I was using my card, and before I knew it, I'd overspent my account balance. I'm in a really tight spot with repayments now.
He admitted, barely masking his panic. I was questioning his spendthrift ways. Pressed, what exactly did you spend such a large amount of money on? Nate awkwardly confessed.
Well, there were a few drinking parties in a row, and before I knew it, the money was gone.
At this irresponsible behavior, both my husband and I felt nothing but despair. To think that at 30, he still lacks restraint, wandering bars, and now saddled with debt he can't repay. They contemplated taking strict measures since it was his duty to work and solve this problem himself. However, we also understood that any blemish on his credit report could ruin his future prospects. To prevent such a predicament, my husband, with deep furrows on his brow, asked how much was needed. Nate hesitated before revealing quietly,
I need about $12,000.
I was taken aback by the sum, $12,000. I could only exclaim. Hearing the amount, I felt a profound shock. How could one even spend so much? Didn't he realize that this was way beyond his salary? If he could repay it with his own income, there would be no issue. But with his current salary, repaying the debt while covering living expenses was utterly impossible. After discussing it as a couple, we reluctantly decided to take on our son's debt. We then interrupted our son's independent living and started anew with him living at home with us as a family. Ultimately, he continued the same pattern as before, spending all the money he earned on his own pleasures without contributing any to the household. His irresponsibility only caused us to worry, and our concerns for his future deepened day by day. During this time, tragedy struck our home. My husband suddenly passed away from acute heart failure, leaving this world behind. Overwhelmed with grief at my husband's sudden death, I was unable to stop my tears throughout the funeral. It was my eldest daughter who supported me during this time, helping with the arrangements and preparations for the funeral. Thanks to her, we managed to get through the final rites. But after it was all over, I was left feeling exhausted and empty.
Mom, are you going to be okay with life moving forward? I don't think you're struggling with money, but...
Kate asked with concern. Kate, thank you for worrying about me at a time like this, I replied, grateful for my daughter's thoughtfulness. As I was shedding tears over these warm exchanges, my son approached and asked,
Hey, how much is the inheritance Dad left behind? I have a share in it, right?
Kate frowned at his inappropriate question.
What are you talking about at such a sad time? Don't you have a heart?
She scolded.
It's not like that. Of course I'm sad. But I'm also concerned about the inheritance. He tried to explain, somewhat flustered.
I was observing how my son was taking his father's death. He was expressionless, as if nothing had happened, not participating in the funeral preparations, just coldly observing the proceedings. And when he finally spoke up, it was to inquire about the inheritance. I was filled with a rage that surpassed my grief. I couldn't hide my anger towards Nate, and with intense emotion in my voice, I exclaimed, What kind of son are you, showing no sorrow over your father's passing, even after he took on your debt? I can't support you anymore. It's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. Now, get out.
What? Why would you come to such a conclusion? I mean, I'm trying to grieve properly here.
He retorted, bewildered as if he couldn't believe what was happening. I replied to him more sternly. How can you say you're grieving with that attitude? I'll take care of the inheritance, so from now on, you'll need to live on your own. I declared sternly. Seeing the fear in my son's eyes after I spoke, I didn't want any conflict in the house after the funeral, yet I couldn't suppress my disappointment in him. Nate, regarding the inheritance, this is your share. 1/3 will be transferred to your account, I said matter-of-factly, informing him of the specific amount. His eyes lighting up at the unexpected amount, Nate exclaimed excitedly,
Well, I'm getting this much. Yes.
I felt even more pained by my son's reckless reaction, my lips tight with anger and disappointment. I couldn't understand how my son could show joy over the inheritance amount instead of mourning the family's loss. At that moment, Kate gently approached me saying calmly,
Mom, emotions are running high right now. Let's calm down. I'm here today. Let's spend it together.
With my daughter's consolation, time began to ease my grief, and I started to regain a bit of peace. Yet the void left by my husband's absence wasn't easily filled, and I faced the loss day after day. Some years later, I found myself joining a knitting class with community friends. As a retiree, The suggestion from a friend to value your own time more resonated with me. The time spent focusing on knitting brought unexpected joy, and chatting over tea with friends became a new source of happiness. During these quiet days, I received a rare message from my son. The email from Nate was brief.
I'm getting married. I want you to meet her.
Having not communicated with my son since the funeral, I was genuinely surprised by the sudden news of marriage. Nate was already over 40, and I had never imagined he would show interest in marriage. Feeling pleased that my son was finally taking steps to build a family as a responsible man, I replied immediately. A few days later, as promised, Nate brought his fiancée to visit. The woman Nate introduced was considerably younger, and her name was Mia.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mia.
The young woman greeted cheerfully. I was struck by her wide eyes and flamboyant makeup. There was a clear age gap between her and Nate, as she was much younger than him. Times have changed, and couples with an age difference are more common, but I couldn't help worrying about whether their relationship would really work out. With a modest yet evident curiosity, I asked Mia, "Excuse me, Mia, what kind of work do you do?" I inquired.
Me? Oh, I do something like customer service.
Mia responded casually and leisurely. I felt a bit perplexed by Mia's manner of speaking. The laid-back tone was typical of the younger generation, yet it seemed to lack a sense of urgency, and I couldn't sense much ambition. Nate interjected as if to change the course of the conversation.
What she does for work doesn't really matter. The important thing is that Mia and I are considering marriage. We plan to save up properly for the wedding, but we want to get our marriage certificate first.
Is that so? That's good to hear, but when specifically do you plan to register your marriage? I asked, slightly surprised.
Well, I'd like to do it today if possible.
Nate replied nonchalantly. Today, I couldn't hide my astonishment. But do Mia's parents know about this?
Mia's parents have passed away, so there's no need to ask for permission. That's why we came to greet you before registering.
Nate answered without hesitation. My heart fluttered with the unexpected news of marriage, but I took a deep breath and composed my complex emotions. If this woman was to become part of my family, I thought it best to build a good relationship with her. Hoping that someday Mia would come to cherish me as a real mother, I sorted out my feelings. To my own surprise, I found myself feeling pleased about my son's marriage and smiled at the thought of him choosing a life partner and building a future together. That's wonderful. We entrust our son to you, Mia, I said, my words filled with genuine welcome.
Thank you very much.
Mia replied with respect. Just wait a moment. I bought a cake. I'll go get it, I said with a kind voice, standing up to head to the kitchen. While I was fetching the cake, laughter from Nate and Mia floated from the living room, allowing me to breathe a sigh of relief. Seeing them chat amicably and happily warmed my heart. The visit ended on a positive note with a pleasant atmosphere. As the time for them to leave drew near, Nate began to talk about a new plan.
Actually, we're heading off on our honeymoon the day after tomorrow.
Nate revealed. The day after tomorrow. That's really sudden. I expressed my surprise once again. Nate spoke in a relaxed tone.
That was the only day we could get a reservation. I might not be able to contact you much while we're traveling, but please take care, Mom.
While I was remaining calm, I couldn't hide the worry in my voice as I told them, have a safe trip. And with that, I saw them off. But soon my everyday life was shaken by an unexpected event. The moment I checked my bank account to withdraw money for living expenses, my world went dark. The balance had dropped by $3 million. What on earth happened here? I muttered in bewilderment, trying to comprehend the situation. It turned out there were traces of my credit card being used to withdraw a large sum of money. Thinking it was theft, I hurriedly searched for my wallet, only to find the card missing. Determined to go to the police, I then felt a sudden sense of unease. The fact was, I had used the card a few days earlier to fill out some paperwork and had definitely put it back in my wallet. Since then, I hadn't gone out, and there were no signs of burglary at home. The only recollection was that my son and his wife had visited before going on their honeymoon. Yes, they should be on their honeymoon right now. To find some clue, I called my son, trying to suppress me growing panic. When the call connected, Nate answered with a hint of business from overseas.
Mom, I'm a bit tied up right now. I'm overseas.
Sorry to bother you during your trip, but have you seen my credit card? I asked gently. Instead of an answer, laughter from Nate and his wife seeped through the phone, a heavy and ominous foreboding for me. Nate started to speak in a hurried tone on the other end.
Oh, have you noticed already? That was quick. We really needed a credit card for our stay abroad, so I used yours. Actually, I'm on the credit blacklist and can't have a card in my name.
I was unable to contain her mix of shock and anger, exclaimed, "What are you talking about? Why didn't you tell me this important fact beforehand?" Nate responded with a carefree smile in his voice.
Well, you always nag so much, Mom. And I thought, why not borrow some money while I'm at it? A free trip abroad? What could be better than that, right? Mia gave me the advice.
At this reckless response, my anger reached its peak. I see, that idea came from Mia, I said with a wry smile.
I was surprised when she suggested borrowing the credit card, but for her, it must have seemed like the best idea.
Exactly. We're family, so borrowing the credit card a little shouldn't be a problem at all. We have to enjoy to the fullest.
Now that it's decided, if there's anything you want, I'll buy it for you.
I felt deeply upset on the spot that the couple seemed to be ignoring my presence and had blatantly misused my credit card. It was clear that my son's wife was complicit in the act. Did they think such behavior was permissible just because they were family? Even within a family, there should be a certain level of manners, common sense, and morality. I questioned in my heart whether it was acceptable to ignore such basic ethics simply because the family was not around.
Oh, we should pick out a souvenir for you too, Emily.
That's a great idea. Mia, you really have a big heart.
No, it's nothing big really.
Cool, I like that plan. I'll pay back the money when we get back.
I was pained by the events that followed. While I was busy in the kitchen preparing the cake, the couple had taken the opportunity to steal my credit card from my wallet. Their giggles might have been mocking me all along. How they must have laughed for naively celebrating their marriage while being oblivious to the theft. The thought that I had been ridiculed without my knowledge made I feel ashamed of my own lack of vigilance. Determined not to let my son have his way anymore, I immediately contacted the credit card company to cancel the card and added my son's number to the call block list. I then decided to move out to cut all ties with my son.
I can understand why you'd want to fight back, Mom. Don't worry, I will never give out your new address.
Kate promised after I confided my plan to her. Thank you, I'll let you know once I've moved. I expressed my gratitude for Kate's support. With a calm resolve against my son and daughter-in-law's actions, I began to take swift action. So that plan was Mia's idea, I remarked with a forced smile.
Mom, I'm sorry, Nate is here and insists on seeing you. He won't leave until he talks to you.
Kate conveyed over the phone. I see. I'm really sorry for the trouble. I'll come over right away. Just wait a little. I promised my daughter. I hurried over to my daughter's house, not wanting to cause any more disturbances. The moment I faced my son, he confronted angrily.
What have you done, Mom? You got me into a terrible situation.
Nate accused loudly. I maintained my composure and explained, I stopped it because you used my credit card without permission. If a card is lost, it can be misused by someone else. Contacting the card company to stop it was the natural course of action.
I didn't lose it.
Nate immediately retorted. Indeed, you didn't lose it, you stole it, which is far worse, I replied with a firm yet calm voice. As Nate looked bitterly frustrated, I continued my words. I pointed out that while he acted like a victim, he was actually the offender. If you had a good time spending someone else's money, even if just for a while, isn't that enough? I said coldly.
Enjoy. We ran out of money and couldn't get home. We had to go to the embassy and somehow get in touch with my sister. It was the worst trip ever. And because of that, Mia left me. What are you going to do about it?
Nate protested, his anger growing. That's not my fault. If you had traveled on your own earnings, none of this would have happened, replied calmly.
Shut up. Just give me the money.
Nate yelled, unable to control his emotions. Why? What do you need it for? I asked, still composed. Nate, what do you need the money for?
I need it to buy a present for Mia. If I apologize properly, maybe we can start over.
I felt a heavy weight in my heart, but seeing my daughter's perplexed face, I couldn't hide my displeasure at my son's foolish actions. The idea of my son chasing after a young person for what seemed like financial reasons, while lacking funds himself, was incomprehensible to me. At your age, are you still saying such foolish things? I asked her son.
Shut up. I spent hundreds of thousands for my marriage to Mia.
He retorted defiantly, spending money to buy someone's affection. I replied, my voice laced with anger. Where did you get such money?
That's, well, from a card loan. I'm working and I'm paying it back properly, so it's fine.
He justified himself. I was troubled by my son's willingness to incur debt to lavish money on a woman. Such a marriage, clearly based on financial gain, was visible to anyone, and my son seemed totally unaware of the fact.
Mia has been a great support to me. She's had a tough life without parents, but she's always encouraged me when I'm down from work.
Watching my son mutter about apologizing to Mia, I felt as if he was trapped by something. Where is this considerate Mia now? I asked quietly, yet with deep interest. Nate raised his voice in anger, blaming me for the significant trouble he faced.
Because the card was blocked during our honeymoon, I was embarrassed. Mia left me because of you.
I responded with a sharp yet calm rebuttal to his illogical reasoning. If she left you over something like that, she doesn't seem like such a good person. Was it wise to rush into marriage, spending hundreds of thousands?
You wouldn't understand, but I need Mia. I can't do without her.
Staring at his smartphone screen, he looked at a photo of himself with Mia.
I've seen this girl somewhere before.
Kate suddenly remarked upon seeing the photo. She remembered something. Really? Where? I inquired with interest.
Yes, I heard about her at work. There's this cute but problematic girl who works at a cabaret club. She's good at stringing men along and is known for doing marriage fraud.
Marriage fraud, I murmured, worried. Kate went on to explain in more detail.
She brags about getting sympathy by claiming to be all alone in the world. It's really scary.
That can't be true. Mia is a really good person. You'll understand if you talk to her mom.
Agitated, Nate called Mia.
Hello? What's up?
Mia, where are you? You said you weren't doing anything lowly. You said you loved only me. That was true, right?
Did you really think you were loved? No way. Why would I like a man 20 years older?
I was deceived by you.
Deceived? You're the one who thought I considered marrying you because you were rich. But actually, you're poor. That's complete fraud. Don't contact me anymore. I can't think about marriage now.
The call ended abruptly, leaving Nate to collapse to the floor in shock. I looked at my son sitting on the floor, his foolishness clear. The inevitable end that was apparent from the beginning was now reality.
I've gotten into hundreds of thousands in debt for Mia. What am I going to do now?
He despaired. That was the path you chose. It's only natural you earn and repay it.
Don't be so cold. Help me, Mom.
Nate pleaded desperately. I've done enough for you. I've shouldered your debts, gave you a home, looked after you. No more.
But that's what family is for.
He claimed, with expectations of family support. What's supposed to? You're over 40, not married, no family, living off parents. Don't you feel pathetic? I refuse to be involved in your reckless life any longer. I give up on you. Nate was visibly upset by my words. In his breakdown, he turned to Kate, his sister, for salvation.
Sis.
However, Kate responded with a firm refusal.
I can't do it. I have children of my own. Spending money on you would be unfair to them.
That's cold.
Kate chastised him with even harsher words.
If you think I'm being cold, what about you stealing and using the credit card without permission? That's far colder.
I was witnessing my son's despair as he covered his face, made the tough decision to cut off any future assistance. Offering help now would only condone his irresponsibility because he's family, and he would never learn. The coddling had to end. Later, I heard that my son inevitably went bankrupt. He lost his residence and was forced to live a modest life in a shabby apartment. Once surrounded by people and looking splendid, he now has disheveled hair, a gaunt face, and spends his days in loneliness without acquaintances. I assured myself that my choice was right. Now I am thoroughly enjoying my new life in a senior exclusive apartment. There, I find many people of my age, and they never run out of common interests to talk about. The occasional tea parties in a friend's room have become one of my great pleasures. During these gatherings, they share everyday anecdotes and reflect on their pasts. After all the trouble with my son, I had decided to live the rest of my life for myself. I is determined to put myself first and enjoy the richness of time.